Thank you for having us, Matt, and everybody at AutomaTech. My name is Greg Cooper. I'm one of the Stratus sales reps. I cover the Northeast territory for Stratus. On the call also, I have Mark Ewing, who covers the Southeast, along with the technical support people, Walter, Munzie, and Chris. So appreciate you having us and going through these trying times, and this ought to work out good. So I'm going to give you a little overview of what Stratus has, and then we have some question and answer time. I got the technical guys on the phone too to dig in deeper if we want to do that. So, what is Stratus? We consider ourselves an edge computing company, but what we really are doing more is working with the virtualization efforts of most companies in the industrial space and taking their critical applications and putting them on a more hardened and secure compute platform. So, kind of to level set a little bit right now, your typical iFix historian, different packages that you're running now on the industrial site are running on some kind of current server. And as you are moving towards your virtualization, you're looking at different ways to possibly understand what's going to be the best method forward, looking at high availability clusters, which is kind of IT intensive, and then we'll talk more about continuous availability, where we fit in with OT and IT solution, making sure your applications are up and running at all times. So again, this kind of builds on the last point. Right now, with the standard type compute solutions that you have via an IT server or industrial PC, there's issues with running multiple VMs on these. You don't want that one computer going down. So people have moved into looking at doing clusters and also virtualization, which I'm assuming everybody on the call is either doing virtualization or moving that way. I think it's going to be something that what we see in the industry, close to 85% of the industrial manufacturing facilities in 2025 will be running on virtualized platforms. And then we talk more about how we take that and truly provide an OT solution with an integrated redundant protecting solutions. We've got two products that we offer industrial sites. The black one there on the left is our FT server, fault tolerant server, and then the ZTC Edge on the right is our smaller unit that's meant to be out on the plant floor. So as I talk about virtualization, and I'm sure you talked to AutomaTech a lot about it as well, the big point of this slide is basically when you put all your eggs in one basket, meaning you're going to take advantage of all the benefits that virtualization has to offer, you're going to have to probably make sure that that basket's pretty strong. So as you're moving from less and less compute hardware on the plant floor going to a single server, that's where we come in to help you support that movement. And this really shows how virtualization is a natural fit for Stratus. You can have the benefits of running fewer servers, obviously, and provisioning additional virtual servers when you need them. You can actually run test environments on this hardware as well while the machine is running. And you can also implement disaster recovery options all on the same platform. So with the Stratus fault tolerant platform, you're assured you will not experience any downtime of your data loss or in your virtualized environment. Here's some typical customers now that we deal with. And some of these logos are obviously worldwide and known. A lot of the industries that we see a lot of current play in right now is water, wastewater, power gen, material handling. Those three are still probably even more important in these days and times with COVID, that their applications are running constantly and they don't have any downtime with their compute platforms. So when we talk about modern computing solutions, our mission at Stratus is to make this simple, protected, and autonomous. So simple, we want it to be not labor intensive for the OT folks to become IT experts or rely on the organization and the IT group to help them on the industrial floor. We want to have a single button restore, protected. So, you know, a lot of the data now, if you're listening about cybersecurity, you know, we've got embedded security, seamless failover. Our products have built-in whitelist, blacklisting. There's a lot of hardware driven stuff that we can help as well as with trusted USB ports. And autonomous. What's really a great feature that a lot of our industrials love about the Stratus platform is that when there is an issue with our hardware, it will alert you or us or however we want to set it up that there might be an issue. And part of the service agreement that we have with our customers is that we will have a repair part out there next day. So you will never skip a beat. Your system will keep running. It won't bring your system down. Here's kind of where our two platforms kind of reside within a manufacturing facility. We're working with a lot of OEMs. So if you've seen some OEM equipment, skid mount equipment that's coming in with industrial computers, we're working with a lot of them now, all the way to the line manufacturing. And you can see that's where our ZTC Edge product, it's the single or redundant nodes play. And then if you get it a little higher with more compute power, more VMs, we've got the plant and the enterprise piece covered. A little bit more about the ZTC Edge. What's a big feature for most of our customers, they don't have to mess around with loading any kind of virtualization package on here. It comes integrated, and it also has a redundancy layer built in as well. That's the automated protection and recovery, as you can see. The simplified security that I mentioned on the previous slide. The OT maintainability, and also it comes with a console so you can see the health monitoring and the managed support. What makes us different than buying a standard industrial PC? So as you can see here, unlike a typical industrial PC, as I mentioned, we have the built-in virtualization and availability. It comes right out of the box. Unlike a typical server, this ZTC can be deployed in the plant floor. These are put into control cabinets now, mounted close to the operation. And then the redundancy needed. The ease of deploying these are so simple. You don't have to do any scripting, any additional switches, any hardware to get the high availability and fault tolerance. Same with the FT server. Obviously, with the continuous and easy delivery of the application data, simplifying the management and service. These are very prevalent in water wastewater facilities, where it's critical that they don't have any downtime, especially when they're doing any kind of chemical editing, but also as OT folks are not necessarily IT specifically trained, where this thing calls home if there's an issue. And this kind of gets into a little bit more on why it's different than a typical off-the-shelf Dell or HP type of server cluster, where this is all built in one box. And again, operationally simple, continuous availability, and cost-effective. Where you're doing your virtualization, you can buy the FT server with a built-in VMware and run all your applications on here. You don't need the VM or the vCenter server. You don't need to buy multiple licenses. This is one IP address. You don't have to worry about the additional switches, the additional external storage, and as well as VMware Essential Plus license. Many manufacturers run equipment, industrial manufacturers run equipment for many, many years. Unlike most of our competitors, our refresh technology rate is more from 8 to 12 years versus a standard computer, which is probably 3 to 5. And that's a huge benefit. You don't want to replace a computer every 3 to 5 years because of some hardware change. As long as you're under support with us, we will guarantee you that that piece of equipment, same hardware that's built into that, will be replaced with the same hardware. And that's really important for a lot of pharmaceuticals as well, if any of them are on the phone for validation purposes. I'll quickly mention our service agreements and our service offerings. There's 3 different flavors here. What I talked about before, and probably one of the biggest features of our product, is that our agreements, we will replace the hardware if there is a failure, or if we are even sensing a potential transient failure. There will be a notification sent out, and we can go into more detail with a follow-up call, or after this, we can have different methods of being alerted. If you are concerned about sending a message to the Stratus Support Center because you're air-gapped or trying to be air-gapped, you can send messages internally, call Stratus, we can take care of it. We will replace the hardware and you will not miss a beat, you'll still be running. Had a couple of success stories that I wanted to go over, just to give you a feeling for where you might have an opportunity or think that this might be a good fit for your applications. This is a New Kent, Virginia, utilities, water, wastewater reclaim treatment plant. They were looking to upgrade their infrastructure. They wanted to reduce the hardware and they could not handle any interruptions. So AutomaTech brought Stratus in, showed them the features and benefits, how to understand using this technology, their business impact down there in the right corner, their system's predictability, their satisfaction, and 24/7 reliability. And as you can see, the operations superintendent, he considers SCADA the brain, and he thinks Stratus is what keeps the brain working. So kind of like to say, we want to make sure it doesn't go brain dead, and that's where we handle the back end piece. Here's a company called K Instruments that does data acquisition systems for validations for pharmaceuticals. And as I mentioned before about pharmaceuticals, the requirements of a high degree of reliability and no data loss for validation. So their batch requirements have to be traced back for everything that's happened during that batch. So they cannot have a hiccup in a compute platform issue. They started looking at servers with clusters and then host servers also with fault tolerant. They went with Stratus. The ease of use, the predictability, the added peace of mind, and the reliability is what sold them on using our solution. This was a new plant that was built, a baby formula plant that was built. As you can see, some of the challenges they had, they weren't a data center deployment centric type of organization. Their production floor people were not IT skilled folks. They needed to minimize downtime to ensure product quality. Losing a batch was very expensive. They looked at traditional IT virtualization, and a lot of times our customers have IT standards for their enterprise. The enterprise has a different triad, if they call it, as far as confidentiality and integrity and availability, whereas plant floor availability is number one. So a lot of times when we get involved with customers, we end up talking to the IT departments to show them what Stratus does and how important it is for availability. And they are very interested because they don't want to sign up for the availability piece on a manufacturing floor. So as you can see here, the business impact was 100% operational continuity. The solution they picked for this one was the ZTC Edge. It was easy to install, easy to upgrade. You can buy a single node, get up and running, and when you want that reliability and redundancy, you can buy another node. You hook it up to the A-Links, and you now have it synchronized without any added software or code written. So that's kind of a quick session on Stratus. Again, I've got some of the solution engineers on the call as well. Just want to also mention that AutomaTech's going to be running this session next week. So make sure you get a chance to sign up for this. And if you have any questions, get a hold of your AutomaTech salesperson, Matt or whoever, and we're doing virtual sales calls now, obviously, like everybody else in the world. We're doing virtual demos. We can provide you more information on our product and how it works.
So Greg, hey, Matt here, I got a question for you. When you're speaking with customers out there and users of your product, what are some of the challenges they face when it comes to virtualizing industrial applications? What are you guys hearing today?
The challenges as far as virtualizing applications, I think.
And maybe I open it up to the greater group of, you got a couple of Stratus folks in line here that, are hands-on with some of this stuff. So I don't know if any of you guys want to chime in or, talk about what you're seeing, what you're hearing.
Yeah, I'll let Munzie or Walter chime in if they'd like. They do more of the customer-facing applications. If they're on mute.
Oh, this is Walter. Well, what some of the challenges that I'm seeing some of the customers that are facing is they don't understand the virtualization of what it actually can do for them. And once you start explaining that you don't have to have all these hardware servers out there running a single application in time, where you can take all those applications and virtualize them. So basically you'll have 5 or 6 different applications, a historian or whatever application you have. It'll be compartmentalized. It'll be separated and segregated from all the other applications running on that piece of hardware. So, and also, they're also looking at, so that's a new technology for me. I'm not familiar with it, but it's what putting on the Stratus server. What we see as the benefit is, as Coop mentioned, is you can put all those applications on there, have a single server, and it's very, very easy to maintain. So you don't have to have any specialized skills, and they kind of like that because they really don't have IT people on a plant floor. Muncie, do you have anything to add or that you see?
No, that's it. I think you summed it up pretty well. The lack of IT skills and the understanding of virtualization on the plant floor and how to set that up is a big challenge. The good thing is AutomaTech's got a lot of experience there and kind of can help structure that, and as do we, our installers, as part of the installation process, and as well as AutomaTech, who can install as well, know how to sort of set up the beginnings and the foundation for a virtual environment, and to get that deployed so that really you get to focus on just application design and deployment, and make sure that side works well. And then the Stratus kind of just takes care of itself. You don't have to know all the technical details of setting up replication between 2 separate nodes like you would in a traditional cluster for availability.
Yeah, thanks guys for clarifying that and answering some of the questions there. Just a quick reminder to the group, if you have any questions you'd like to ask the Stratus team here, you can type in the Q&A window. If you're brave enough to talk, feel free to raise your hand. A little blue icon will pop up and we can turn you on to speak verbally here and get into the conversation. Another question that I have for you guys is just regarding getting started with virtualization. What does Stratus do to kind of help you out? And I know a lot of cases we face today, we're seeing a lot more virtualization, but if you haven't done it before and it's the first time, what do you guys do on the Stratus side to help them get familiar with it, get comfortable with it when they get started?
Oh, this is Walter.
Go
ahead, Muncie.
Okay, sure. So basically we kind of lay the foundation, and the good thing is again, whether it's AutomaTech or Stratus, we will install the virtual environment from scratch and build it on the system. And then as part of the Jumpstart implementation, we'll set up 4 VMs, and we do it kind of in a train the trainer type of way. It's as much as setting up your virtual environment, operating systems on the guests and getting all that set up from a practical standpoint, but it's also a teaching moment. So part of that Jumpstart training includes 3 to 4 hours worth of one-on-one explanation of how things were done and how the VMware operation actually functions. And so we kind of lay that foundation of what's there. You don't have to have gone through the full-blown VMware admin class in order to get to that point. Does that answer the question you're looking for?
Yeah, that's helpful. That's good to know, Muncie. Thanks for clarifying that. Appreciate it. Hey, one of the questions that came through in the chat here is regarding legacy systems. So obviously working in the industrial world, you see a lot of legacy systems and applications out there. Sometimes it just like hurts my head when I see, Windows NT or Windows XP systems still out there running critical manufacturing processes. What about running those in a Stratus platform environment? Is that possible?
Yes, it is. Basically, the software that's used is VMware, which has a compatibility list. So it does support older operating environments or systems. So through a utility, you can take what you're currently running on a standalone server and convert it to a virtual machine. And this way, you can still preserve your infrastructure and your investment in those older applications and have them run on a more modern piece of hardware.
Great. That's good to know. Looks like we've got one question here. So let me just make this work. Looks like it's Todd and he wants to speak. So Todd, I'm going to put you on speaker here. Off you go.
Hey everybody, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. This is a great session. I unfortunately only caught the end of it, but I do have some pretty good experience working with these over the last couple of years, and very excited in how we've been able to employ it. So it is a great solution, and the ZTC is pretty awesome for HMI and SCADA upgrades and migrations. My question is, in the ZTC platform, do you see additional tiers of product in that form factor that would give us a little more flexibility in how we apply it without having to go to an FT server? The form factor is pretty awesome because we can tie it in without a rack, without all the things that come with a 19-inch rack, and put that out on the plant floor and the industrial setting with the PLCs and everything, and not have to have an overly complicated infrastructure to go with it on HMI and SCADA level type solutions.
That's a great question, Todd. I ask them the same question fairly often, and I never really get a straight answer. So coming from you, a customer, putting them on the spot. Well, let's see what happens here. Go guys, go ahead.
Who wants to? This is Walter. I'll take that question. Yeah, there is more form factors coming out. Basically, because of the design, there's constraints on what you can actually put in it because it is a solid state unit. So there's no moving parts. It gives you an IP40 rating. So it's great to be on a plant floor where you don't have to have any kind of specialized environmental concerns outside of sulfuric acid or something like that or sulfur that can create an acid. So currently right now it's a 32 gig limitation on the memory on it, and on the 100i, which is the first model, it's a 4-core CPU. So that gives you 8 cores with hyper-threading involved. And hyper-threading basically takes the power that you have and doubles it. So when you look at there's a constraints of how many virtual machines you can put on there. Say an application takes 3 CPUs to run and maybe 8 gigs of memory. So you can see, so you probably could put 3 or 4 applications on that before you start exceeding the resources that are available to you. On a 110i, it's a little better. We got a 6-core CPU, gives you 12. The memory is still the same, 32, but it also gives you 2 terabytes of internal solid state storage. So you can see there, you can do a lot more with that one because you have more storage, so you can actually archive some data and really keep some data locally. What we are coming out with soon, probably in the next couple months, is we're going to increase the memory on that form factor. So it'll go from 32 to 64 gigs of memory. So you can see now you can actually add quite a few more applications into it. And also the 110i, it does support both HA, which is the high availability cluster solution, as well as our fault tolerant solution. So this way it gives you continuous processing on your applications. In the futures, I have to believe that engineering right now, we are creating more product out of that. So there'll probably be more CPUs, more memory, more storage. But currently this is what we have. And within the near term, there will be more memory. I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I have a follow-up question to go with that. in an application where we wanted to deploy that SCADA layer out into the field, this solution does require an additional thin client to interface to a keyboard, pointer, monitor. Is there any intention of tying that functionality into the ZTZ form factor, or will it always require an additional thin client to access those virtual machines?
Are you talking about like a console?
Yeah, so you can access, say I load a SCADA package application on a virtual machine and have a client environment running on the ZTC as well and on a virtual machine. I can't access those through the ZTC hardware. It's just a hypervisor. There's no access to those.
I currently, I don't
machines.
believe there is, but I can ask the question.
Yeah, this is Muncie. I can kind of help there. So because we've taken the industrial PC form factor and loaded a hypervisor and pre-built it with virtualization, it really changes the nature of that device. And when you think about it, you've got all these ports, but now you're not directly tying it into a host OS. You've got all these guest OS instead. And taking an HDMI port and combining it or connecting it directly with a virtual machine is kind of a large ask from a technology standpoint. But then you've got to deal with when you move that VM from one node to the other, that port can't go with it. So binding physical ports to a virtual machine is challenging to do, and it's challenging to maintain. So it really isn't kind of in the nature of the device itself because it's not a one-to-one relationship. It's a one-to-many. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it does. And we had worked out this question in the past as well. I just wanted to see if there was any future plans to add that capability.
Gotcha. Yeah, we can
Awesome.
take it back again. I think the last I heard was that engineering thought it might be doable, but hadn't seen the pathway there yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Todd, good question. And to be honest, I think this is not necessarily specific to Stratus, but if you guys are going to do something about that, that'd be great, because it's something we run into all the time when somebody moves from a physical machine to a virtual machine. Case in point, they may have SCADA systems that sit on a desk, and they use the physical machine also as the runtime component to be able to visualize and analyze and control their process. When they move to a virtual environment, regardless what the platform is, that's running somewhere else, and then they have to provide some sort of means of visualization. What we see common, at least on the AutomaTech side, is that they will leverage, whether it be true thin client technology or at least even in some cases a one-to-one remote desktop environment, so that they can actually see the visual desktop of what's running in that virtual machine. So that's been a solution to that, Todd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a great single box solution as well. And that was where that question usually comes up. If you weren't going to go with high availability or fault tolerant configuration and start with a single box ZTC, it is a great solution in that application as well.
Yep, good point. Great question, Todd. Thanks for asking that one. A couple other ones that came in through the Q&A window here I'll ask to the group. First one is regarding virtualization platforms across the portfolio. So the question is VMware the only supported platform on the devices you guys talked about?
This is Walter. On the FT server, we do support, there's 3 native implementations of an operating environment. We do support Windows 2016 currently, and it does have the feature where you can enable a hyperthread or Hyper-V, which gives you the virtualization features for Windows. We do support VMware. Currently we're at release 6.7 on VMware. And we do support Red Hat Linux, so that this way we cover all the major operating systems that are out there. On the ZTC, it's we call it our redundant Linux, Stratus redundant Linux. So basically, it's a hypervisor using it based on KVM, and under that, we can support Windows or Linux virtual machines.
Great, thanks guys. Appreciate the answer on that one. And then on these same platforms, let's say something bad does happen and there is an issue with the hardware, there is a failure. What are some of the notification options you offer to be able to let somebody know that they need to take some action or do something to get your systems going again?
Munch, you want to do that one? He's on mute. So basically what we do is typically on the FT server, what we prefer or we would like to do is have an internet connection where it will deposit a call back to our customer assistance center. It's basically a call out. It's just a deposit to call, lets us know what the site ID is of the server and what the issue is. And what we do is if we need to know if it's a hardware component, we will next send out that component next business day. So, and as well, it will be the same exact component as the day that the server was purchased. So as long as they stay on a maintenance contract, you will get that. And so that's how we get the longevity on it. And it's very useful for type of pharmaceuticals where validation has to be done anytime there's a change, but it's not going to be a change. It will be the same exact replacement component. So that validation step's not there anymore. If you don't have an internet connection, we do have an analog modem, so we have communications done that way as well. We also supply SNMP MIBs, so this way, if you have the agent out there, this way, you can trap the messages that way. If you have an email server, local email server, we can send a message that way. So in this way, we try to find multiple ways of having the server call back to us. On a ZTC, it's basically the same way. It's in the email notification. So we need to have a vehicle out that's letting us know, or an internal email where someone from the site can call us and say they have an issue, and we will walk through the issue with you.
Great, thanks, Walter. Appreciate the clarification on that one. I have a question that kind of came up as part of this discussion. So, Stratus frequently talks about the 5 nines of availability. So we deal a lot, obviously, with manufacturing, industrial companies, water, utilities. How do you define what availability level you really need? And is this something that's configurable in the Stratus offerings?
Yeah, I can take that one. This is Muncie. So the big questions that I would ask, are what is my cost of downtime? If something fails that's hosting the applications, what's the impact of that failure? And some of the things that could impact it are going to be your operations, first of all. So can your operations run when the applications are gone? If it's a batch process, typically that's a no. If batch doesn't do well when the application fails, and you typically have to restart it. So what's the cost of that batch? Whether it's raw material goods for food and beverage or pharmaceutical batch, anything like that. What's the cost dollar-wise if that batch has to be thrown away or reprocessed? Another type of cost is going to be man hours. You lose production and people stop and people stand around, so you're not getting any production out of those people and consequently your machinery. And then do you have to call people in an overtime for coming in to do IT work because it happened at night? So what's the man cost or human cost of that outage? And then maybe there's maybe you're in a regulated industry such as water, wastewater, and the EPA mandates that you have data on every drop of water that comes through the system. And if you can't validate the cleanliness or what you've done to it, you get fined because you don't meet certain requirements. So there's a cost there. And so from a dollar standpoint, those are the things that I look at and tells me whether or not I can stomach what's called an HA scenario, which is high availability. And if it's HA, then that means you have a failure recovery type of solution. And if you can handle an outage, say anywhere from 30 seconds to 5 minutes or so, maybe more, depending on what type of solution you have, then you can go with an HA solution. And ZTC has that HA built into it. That's it's designed by nature. If you can't handle that type of scenario, or if the cost is too great for that particular outage for a failure recovery, then you need to look at failure prevention, which is what fault tolerance does. And that's where the FT server fits as a product for being able to tolerate a failure, but maintaining operations. You don't have a loss of data. You don't have a loss of production. probably aren't going to have to call someone in for at the middle of the night because the system continues to operate, and they'll just handle it when they get there in the morning. And ZTC has that FT option as well. The 110i has a fault tolerant checkbox basically for usually 1 to 2 virtual machines. And once we get to the 64 gig model that Walter mentioned earlier, then you may be able to have even more than those 2 machines. So that's kind of how we play in that space, and some of the questions that I tend to ask when we're evaluating what's the right solution for the problem.
Muncie, all this HA and FT talk, this sounds complicated. I bet this is pretty hard to set up, right?
If you're using anything but a Stratus, you're correct. If it's a Dell or HP scenario, you've got to know how to manually build your clustered environment with VMware or Hyper-V and set up the scripts and everything to get your virtual machines to move from one node to the other. If you're doing it with a Stratus solution, though, we do virtualization out of the box and with the FT server to host your enterprise on or your plant or the large scale environment. We don't do failover. It's all running in lockstep processing. So you don't have to set up your virtual machine vMotion or HA or anything like that. And you don't have any scripting. And if you're doing it with ZTC, we have virtualization, the hypervisor built at the factory and installed and set up. So when it comes to you and you configure it, that replication is already done inherently. So there isn't any type of hardcore IT knowledge that you've got to gain with an FT server or with a ZTC solution. There is if you're going with Dell, HP, or anything like that running VMware or Hyper-V.
Muncie, you definitely are an engineer with that answer, because I threw you a softball and you could have just said, not with Stratus, it's not. You can be up and running in 30 minutes, but you gave me the nice, long, detailed engineering answer. So thank you for that. I think some of the crowd will appreciate that. Others are scratching their head a little bit, but thanks for that.
Matt, one other thing about cost that just came up recently for a customer that sometimes we don't think about. I have a customer in the Syracuse area that makes raisin bread, small company, and they supply it to Walmart, and they had an issue with their compute and they went down. And they said that's 2 strikes. They said we've been in our contract 3 strikes with Walmart. They find another provider. So not only are you losing that batch, you may lose a customer when you lose that. So it's something as simple as a small customer like that. And they were OT specific people. When their computer goes down, they didn't know what to do with the computer. They had to bring in outside sources. So,
yeah, good point. Good example there, Greg. Thanks for that. I don't see any other questions in the window here. So leave it up to the Stratus guys, whether it be Greg Cooper or Greg Cooper or Greg Cooper or Greg Cooper. If any one of you
do I show up a lot?
Parting words here. Any parting words from the group?
Let us know how we can help you guys.